Yes, that is the Empire State Building right behind me. I am in New York City for NFT NYC, but we did record a couple of interviews last week with some really interesting NFT connected people. First up, fity.eth. This is a man who has been a film producer, knows Hollywood inside and out, and he's obsessed over IP, how we can leverage the rights inherent in the assets that we own. That has been a big topic at NFT NYC this week, particularly in some of the quieter conversations I've been having. Following up on that is a young filmmaking team comprised of Brice and Zeek. These guys somehow managed to put together an incredible immersive world that persuaded Pedro Pascal, of all people, to come in and be the lead actor in their film Prospect. And well, now they're doing NFTs and they're taking all of that IP learning and lessons from that project where they had to give up so much just to get the film made. They're bringing all of that now to their new project, Fringe. And this is a really interesting conversation. These are people after my own heart, they're filmmakers. And the film track at NFT NYC was small, but you get the sense that there's some very big players starting to make some very big moves from the Hollywood side of town. Fascinating stuff. This is where it begins. I hope you enjoy. Peace. Where's my bagel? Zeta Chain is the first public Layer 1 blockchain that natively connects with any chain and layer without wrapping or bridging assets. This unlocks a new class of omni-chain dApps, such as smart contract managed external assets, even on Bitcoin and Dogecoin, multi-chain NFT ownership, cross-chain DeFi apps, and much more. Check out their developer docs at zetachain.com and start building the future of multi-chain. I am joined by fity.eth, the founder of Apocalyptic Apes and a member of the board of Apes. Welcome to the Defiant. This is your true face, I take it.
Yes. Thank you for asking.
It's working pretty well there. Show us how well the face is working for you and how much you can kind of activate it. I saw you opening your mouth earlier.
I mean, it's a little strange, dude. It's just my face. It's like me asking me, show me how your face works. I mean, it's just me. I mean, I may have a little hair on my back, but it doesn't make me strange.
No. Well, it's fantastic to meet you in your true form. And this brings us to the reason we're even talking in the first place, which is you're a firm believer in the power of IP, of identity in Web3, and of taking IP that is out there and is available to purchase as an NFT, but then you can do so much more with. And I know you have a lot to say about that. So kind of give us an idea of your journey to where you are now in your thinking about how to use Bored Apes and I guess other NFTs as well.
Absolutely. You're from UK, I'm assuming, right?
You got that right. I am.
What? Great question. I think a lot of people have been sleeping on IP rights. Let's go outside. It's too nice. It's too nice to be in the house. What do you think?
Sure.
We're going to go out here and get into my jungle. There we go. Is that better?
Yeah. I'm assuming you're in like Southern California.
I am. That's
yeah, I knew it.
I don't have any pants or shirts or jackets. Yes.
Living the dream.
Yeah.
Yes. So you think people are sleeping on IP rights?
Yeah, people are sleeping on IP rights. People don't understand what IP rights. IP rights stand for intellectual property. If people don't understand what that is, they really should take a look at what's been going on since 1972. Back in 1972, 71, people started using the rentals of their homes and their apartment buildings and their commercial buildings and their warehouses to rent them out to movie studios. Movie studios would go in there, blow up their kitchen, create music videos, do all kinds of cool stuff, and pay them to use the rights for their property. That's intellectual property. So anything that's intellectual property, you can rent out, lease, sublease, do whatever you're allowed to do with it through the company if you own it, and make money on it. The only difference is people have not understood that these NFTs are all yours. When you buy them or you mint them or you own them, you have rights to use intellectual property. One of my partners is Nikki Diamonds and Stecky on a project called MetaDrag. He's taken about 20 or 40 Bored Apes, Mutant Apes, created a project through Diamond Supply and has paid people thousands and thousands of dollars. And if you go to any of the mall and you look at Journeys or other stores in the mall, you'll see skateboards, you'll see t-shirts with mutants and Bored Apes. Those are all Diamond Supply. And why Nicky has done that is he's been doing that since in the 80s. He's been using IP rights. So people don't realize when they flip their NFT, somebody else is going to get their IP rights when they're in full effect.
So we should go back on Nicky, because Nicky was one of the OG Nike Dunk creators, right? Which Correct. Is where Artifact has gone with the crypto kicks. But this is someone who's been doing this since, I guess, the mid 80s and understands.
Bobby Hundreds, Nicky Diamonds, thousands and thousands of companies like Louis Vuitton, Gucci, Nike, Adidas, they've all been doing it. Collaborations have been done for a long time. I mean, you've heard of collaborations before NFTs.
Yeah, and what's interesting is I think people probably, it may not be that they're unaware or that they don't feel that they can take, the pure artwork that they own. And we'll get back to that concept of ownership in a second. I just don't think they realize that this is something that they can do. And I also think that's because you have a collection of 10,000, they think, well, if I do it, somebody else is going to do it. Where is the value really in that?
And that's a really good question. And it's a really good way of thinking. But let's go back to Jimmy Kimmel. Let's go back to Paris Hilton. Let's go back to some of the talk shows you guys have in the UK. In the future, you're going to see talk show hosts become Bored Apes or Apocalyptic Apes or Cool Cats or Doodles. Why? Because they're more interesting to watch than people. Why is Jimmy Kimmel a better host than somebody else? Not because he's a better human or he's best in the one of 10, 100 million in the United States, but because he has a personality. So these IP rights are going to allow the people to step inside of their PFP and show their personality. Maybe somebody thinks they're too fat, too ugly, too beautiful, too handsome, too skinny. Now they have an opportunity to reevaluate themselves and say, hey, I could be awesome again, and I can be a TV host show. I could be a doctor. I could be Dr. Phil. I could be an ape giving people medical advice on farm nutrition, or I can be the specialist in the NFT space or the crypto space. I could tell you why Ethereum is going up or down, or Bitcoin, because I am the super ape.
Well, that presupposes that people have the talent to begin with.
Correct.
Which is not a given. Let's be honest.
No,
and most people don't possess that talent.
That's false. Most people do have that talent. They just don't know how to tap into it.
I'm not sure I agree with you on that one. I think there's levels of talent that people have, but it's by the by anyway. That there is a certain amount of talent requires still a certain amount of finesse and ability to work on that talent and practice and refine your craft, which a lot of people won't do because they want the quick solution in this day and age. So
I come from the entertainment industry. I worked for BET for years and years and years, and I've seen thousands and thousands of people sing, beautiful singing, amazing singing, but they wouldn't sing in crowds. So I used to tell people, if you don't sing, your talent will never be seen. So there's a lot of people that have a talent. Everybody has some kind of talent. I'm not saying everybody has an amazing talent, but everybody has something special about them. It's if you sing in the shower, the only way you're going to get, the only people are going to get to see you in the shower is yourself and maybe some water. So you have to step out of the shower to sing. Just like if you have a talent in crypto, NFT, music, pharmaceuticals, nutraceutical, you have to step out and be able to take that talent out to the world.
You do. And I think you're right that there's a degree to which we're going to see a generation that is very comfortable splitting their identity between lots of different online presences with different faces, VTubing, and in using that as a way to hide their insecurities, but also develop a personality that could only live and could only be the way it is online. And you're demonstrating it for me right now. You have become this character. You become an ape for this interview.
With Ukrainian flags to support Ukraine.
Yeah, I see that, which is ironic because you speak Russian as well.
I was born in Ukraine. but most people don't know that Ukraine and Russia are all the same place. It's like people in Texas fighting Miami. It makes no sense.
Well, let's not get into that. That's not
Yeah.
why we're here.
No,
But no, I appreciate that you're wearing the colors. So let's get back to the diamond supply company. Let's get into some hard figures here, because I think probably most would feel like licensing their IP to merchandising probably isn't going to earn them a great deal of money. But I think the numbers might be surprising. So can you run us through kind of some of the figures that are coming out of just that one simple execution?
Well, just out of that one simple execution, there's thousands and thousands of dollars that are coming in, and there's more that are coming, and it's a royalties, and it just keeps coming and coming, as long as there's supply and demand. But I feel like it's such an early space, and I know we all hear we're early, and I also feel in 8 years we're going to keep saying we're early, because IP rights have not been utilized by many, only a few. I can name maybe 2 or 3 on my hand. Now, there's a lot of partnerships that are happening with Yugo right now. Yugo, this is a rumor, but Yugo and Louis Vuitton have some kind of a collaboration, I heard. Is that a true rumor? Possibly. If it's not going to be Louis Vuitton, it might be somebody else, because I know they have a lot of partnerships. Clone X, Doodles. I mean, they're all creating memberships and partnerships with Web2. My project, Apocalyptic Apes, in the last 3 weeks has gained 17 partnerships with companies that are going to be using our IP rights. I haven't discussed that or introduced it yet, but we have a major company, car company behind us now that is going to be introducing IP rights to our ape holders.
Okay, so there's 2 different things going on here. You have a JPEG. Let's call it that. You have a JPEG, and that JPEG can be printed on a skateboard, or it can be printed on a T-shirt, and you'll collect, a portion of the sales of that. But when you're talking about a car company, that's a very different proposition. You're talking about NFT holders earning a portion of that in some way, or of a musician's sales as well. How does that bit work?
I can't really get into all the dynamics because we haven't released all that yet, but it's going to be very lucrative for people that are holding our NFT. But I can tell you, you've been watching the Geico commercial in the United States, and that Geico commercial had a little lizard, I don't know, or gecko, whatever it was. Now, you can use those little apes or lizards or turtles, whatever it is NFT you have, to put it on cereal boxes. You could put on the visors of your cars. You can put on hoods of your cars. You could put it on the seats. You could put it on sunglasses. You could put it on peanut butter, hot sauce. There's so many avenues for IP rights to be used that people are sleeping on it. And I know it's very hard for all of us to understand that. And we all use, it's a JPEG. It's not just a JPEG. It's a brand that you can brand and make it into something that people are interested in. Would you rather get a bottle of water that says Fiji, or has a badass ape with some apocalyptic features?
Well, to be honest with you, probably rather have the Fiji, because I'd be worried about contamination on the apes, because I know how degenerate everyone is.
Well, not really. It's just a picture.
Yeah, I know, but I come from the world of extreme sports, right? So like Red Bull was always action sports, people doing incredible things, throwing themselves off cliffs. And then you got Monster. Monster comes along and it's just like, oh yeah, this is punk rock. This is like, Red Bull's all clean and Austrian and everything, and then like Monster's American and full diesel. It works, and I get that. And I think what's interesting about the IP rights, most specifically when it comes to Bored Apes, is that you are essentially a franchise holder. And it's up to you to decide what you want to do with that franchise, but you can leverage it and then exploit it however you want. And if you decide that that is what you want to do, then the face value or the floor price of that ape is peanuts compared to what is indeed possible. So I'm going to put it to you to ask if you've looked into the IP rights legalities of Bored Apes in detail, because I'm pretty sure that you must have done in order to be this confident about it.
Not only did I look at it, we have a full-time attorney, IP rights attorney on my project. So I can recite it to you. Man, I could tell you that the Bored Apes have already introduced a movie they're going to be doing. There's a studio right now as we speak that's using Bored Apes as band members. So there is a lot of things that are happening behind the scenes that people don't know about. And every project, including the Bored Apes and so on, is very new to the IP rights and how they're going to do it. But it's a phone call away. It's an email away. If you have an NFT, you're not sure, just email the company. If they don't know, you can ask your attorney, but somebody will figure it out for you.
So it gets really interesting because not all NFTs are created alike. So we have CC0, Creative Commons Zero projects like Nouns. Then you have the really complicated situation around Meebits, which is you've got a ceiling of 100,000 a year that you can earn off that one asset. And then above that, you have to pay them a royalty or some kind of commission for that. And then you have Artifact, where you have basically no rights at all, or you have limited for some, but not for Murakami. So there's like, you have to look per use case, per NFT, what your rights actually are. But do you see this all being stripped away and they're becoming a kind of agreed upon standard for NFTs in the future? I'm really curious where you think that's going to go.
I believe that there will be an opportunity where everything is going to be down the road to simplify it, because it's very hard to have so many projects with all different IP right standards. So I think there will be an industry standard, kind of like in the movie business, you've got Screen Actors Guild, which pays a scale. So I think there will be some kind of a uniform, but because we're so new, people are still testing. I mean, I have NFTs myself that I've contacted the developers, say, hey, listen, I have an opportunity to do this. Do you mind if I use this, this, and that? Like, yeah, no problem. Let's do that. So I think a lot of projects are open to it. They just don't know. They don't know what the right thing to do to help the community, help themselves. As far as you go with the other side, we don't really know what's really going to happen. Like, they dropped 100,000 pieces of land. We've got these codas. We've got these things. I've got some of those. I like them. They could have amazing partnerships that are already in place, and maybe that's why they did it. So we know nothing. I mean, I could tell you right now, I know nothing, and I'm not even going to try to guess or try to figure out what they're doing.
We do know a few things. And we know that they raised a shit ton of money, not just on the sales, but also from A16Z's led round. And we do know that they're working with Improbable, and Improbable's tech is like superlative.
Right.
And we also know that their execution is phenomenal. Are you going to Ape Fest next week?
Yes, I'll be there. So
I think we'll see a lot at Ape Fest, or maybe we won't, but maybe we will. But I agree with you that there's no doubt that whoever's advising Yuga understands IP rights.
100%. And one thing about Yuga is they're a lot like Apple iPhone. If they have something dropping tomorrow, you call them up. When does it come? We don't know. All of a sudden, it just drops. So they do have superb delivery. And go back, it's a year. It's like the company just celebrated a year anniversary, and they started out with a few guys. Now they're worth, was it $18 billion? And besides them being pretty smart guys as it is, they've hired some smarter people to work with them to assist them. So I'm looking for some really huge stuff to come from Yugo, but owning Yugo and being a part of you got to be patient. You got to just kind of chill out and go at their pace, because that's how they work.
And I also think that there's an onus on an owner. That sounded terrible, but there's a burden on an owner to do the work, And I remember in the early days of Bored Apes, you would see people, here's a credit card, and I've made a coffee brand, and now I'm going to do these board burgers. And then people were just experimenting with what they could do. And that set the template for what every other subsequent NFT project realized they could do. Because you're right, there was that moment, was like, oh shit, wait a second, I can do this? Oh wow, that's awesome. And now it's kind of gone, well, let's just wait for you guys to do the next thing, because that's where the value is. But I think, there is got to be some kind of education for people to go, if you put the work in, this thing could be insanely valuable, because it's not just you have the entire Bored Apes and everything else that everybody else is doing to lean on as well, because you're part of that collective, but you're individual within it.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And one thing I'll add to the Yugo and the Bored Apes, they're extremely talented group of people. I mean, I got socks, t-shirts, hats, rugs, not rugs like a rug, but actual rug in my house. Of all people who Yeah, exactly. You got one too. There you go. I'm getting that one today.
You know, so it's
That's
really
fun.
nice.
It is
It's a very nice garment. This one, yeah, it's a very unusual one. It's a nice piece. Yeah,
that is a good one. No, but I've got rugs with my Bored Apes custom made by Bored Ape holders. So I think one thing about the Bored Ape holders that I respect and appreciate, and I wish other projects would do, is they've taken on themselves to help. They actually help the project. They help the community. And then you've got people like Madonna tweeting about Bored Apes. Today she tweeted about You're the Woman, and she uses this PFP. And you've got Tom Brady. You've got Justin Bieber. You got a lot of people that are actually creating free publicity and free PR for Bored Apes. And I think that people don't realize what it costs to hire somebody like that for a tweet or for an Instagram post. So I think that we haven't seen anything yet. When I first started out in the NFT space, I have a friend of mine plays at NBA. It's a National Basketball Association here. So could you contact Hugo and get me a free Bored Ape? And I said, sure. I thought they would give them to free to NFT, like big players. So I called them up. Not only would they not give them a free one, they sent me a list of all the NBA and the celebrities they had it. And I was blown away by that list. Every person on that list paid for them, which is mad respect.
Yeah, it was probably about a month after they launched. I did a big kind of film on them, and I got to speak to the founders. I was like, oh, this is cool, this is fun, and we got some quotes together, and we it was so small, but already Snoop had one. Yeah, and I remember speaking to them, and they were like, dude, what the fuck is going on? That was then, and like you said, it's been a year, and so much has happened. But we shouldn't just dwell on the apes. The apes are kind of breaking down walls and breaking down conceptions that we had about what's possible here.
They're leading the path.
They are leading the path. But it's important
to talk about it, and I'll tell you why. Not because of any other reason, is they're doing things that other people should be doing.
Well, yeah, and they're showing what's possible, and others copy, and I think that's something that a lot of people find objectionable. I think your own project is basically a derivative. Apocalyptic Apes is a derivative of apes, but that's entirely your prerogative. You're allowed to do that, and no one could stop you. The true innovations, again, they're in uncharted territory here with the other side and everything else. That's where it gets interesting for me, because they keep changing the game, and the stakes get bigger and bigger and bigger as they go on. And there is a danger that it just becomes oversaturated and it becomes exhausting. But I do think the reason I wanted to have this conversation is that I also believe, like you do, that floor prices really won't be the metric by which we judge the success of NFTs in the near future. The IP rights, the revenue streams that are generated by virtue of somebody's talent plus the NFT is going to be the true metric. But as you said, I think we're super early in this, and I want to kind of understand, if someone does set up these IP rights, how do they collect the royalties? How do they get their payday from what they've done?
It's an interesting question, but I feel like with so many PFPs out there and so many different measures of how it's done, you have to kind of see where you're at, which NFT you're working with. Like, for instance, some founders will create IP rights for you. Sometimes you can create it yourself. Like with Nicky Diamonds and Diamond Supply, he did it in a way where it all went through Diamond Supply and they got a paycheck from him. So I think every project is going to be unique and different. There's not one right answer for that.
What's really interesting is seeing Jenkins the Valet signed by CAA, because it's a character, but it's a collective sitting underneath it. Did you see that one?
I own it.
You own it. Well, there you go then. So
I think Jenkins is brilliant. I actually used to be with CAA, and I think just to tap into the CAA with your Bored Ape is brilliant.
And it's, flipping it all on its head, though, there is this sense that there is a Hollywood influencer machine that is sort of powered into action, and is the one that's working with MoonPay and getting apes into the hands of Post Malone, for instance. And that was just horrible the way they did that. But it feels engineered and artificial in a way. Is that something that we should be wary of? That that it's not real enough?
No, not at all. I think it's going to be great. I think it's great. I think the fact that Hollywood is taking an interest, taking a peek. You want those people in here. There's some really smart people in Hollywood and in the entertainment industry, and they're going to figure out a way to maximize this, not for themselves, but also for the people.
Well, you said maximize for themselves. Hollywood has a terrible reputation in exploiting creators, and particularly IP. And we have to go back to the moment that George Lucas acquired the merchandising rights for Star Wars, and probably the greatest Hollywood business decision in history. But I've got a young team of filmmakers coming on my show next week who made a film with Pedro Pascal and Jay Duplass. Really beautiful indie sci-fi film. They got screwed senseless, absolutely screwed so badly. And I wonder if they just didn't have a good lawyer, or it's just the machine crushed the life out of them. And how is this going to be any different from that?
You know what's funny? Look, do I trust Hollywood? No. No, they used to be there. I'm not there anymore. I mean, there's a bunch of jackasses running these studios most of the time. I'm not going to lie about that. But knowing what's happened and what's transpired from there, they're not going to enter the space and make bad decisions, because if they do, they're going to get blackballed real hard. Just like people have been blackballed from Hollywood, they will be taken out of NFT space quicker than you know it. So they're not going to come in here and play games. As a matter of fact, most people that come into Web3 from Hollywood, and I've spoken to them on Twitter Spaces, Clubhouse, are really awesome people. They really understand Web3. They want to be in Web3. And the reason they're coming in here is because they're sick of, their standards, the double standards. They don't want it anymore. Yeah. So I don't think we're going to see a bunch of bullshit. I think those people that have been running the studios, have been screwing people for years, they're on their way out.
Well, that's maybe. I mean, who knows? I as someone who's made a feature film and grinded my way up through making music videos, and I guess a similar kind of trajectory to you from when you were producing. You do your time in the trenches. You love the business, but you hate the business at the same time.
I still finance films here and there. I still have very good friends at Endeavor, and I work with a lot of projects here and there. But I feel like the breeds of the people who were just old school, they're either on their way out, they're dead, or going to jail. So I think there's a new type of a person that's going to be in Hollywood, and I feel like Hollywood may just make their shift into Web3. Because look at it this way: who goes to the movies? I mean, who watches Netflix anymore? Nobody supports anything. We support OpenSea. That's it. If it's not on OpenSea, I'm not watching it.
That's a big statement. Actually, OpenSea, now you bring it up, has just done a bunch of upgrades. One of which this is really fascinating, is the ability to split royalties into multiple wallets. So instead of just having a single wallet that receives a royalty, you can hard code it so that royalties can be split automatically, which I think is pretty spectacular. But you have to make sure you code it right from the start. But obviously, if you're hard coded your royalty split into the NFT itself in perpetuity, you better make sure you get a good deal in the first place. But that's pretty profound. That's pretty awesome. There's no reliant on someone to, disperse the royalties to you after they've come in. I think that's pretty awesome.
I think it's awesome. I think it's amazing they're doing that. But I'm a fan of OpenSea. I know a lot of people call it Broken Sea and they don't like it, but they don't realize OpenSea was run by young guys, just like every other project. I mean, they never thought it would get as big as it did. So I think for the most part, I'm pretty impressed, because people don't realize how many projects get launched there every day, how much volume they have. So I hope they get it together where it's run a little bit more corporate, a little bit more uniform, so you can get in touch with people. Luckily for me, I do have somebody that's been helping me with them, but there's a lot of people who don't understand, the ins and outs and safety and so on, and you can get yourself in trouble.
I think that's probably true for so much of what we see in Web3, that most people don't realize that actually the people they're getting angry with are just a bunch of kids living out of their front room, or that, building a layer 1 blockchain is probably the hardest thing you can possibly do. And like having a little bit of patience with a team could be a good thing. I agree with you on OpenSea. Like, how much time have you spent on OpenSea in the last 12 months? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And how much fun were we having? Like, I used to trade shitcoins, and it was it was horrible. There's nothing fun about a shitcoin, but like the JPEGs, it's fun. And I must ask you right now, where you think all of this goes in the middle of what is undoubtedly going to be a pretty long and drawn out kind of bear phase, just in general. Like, is there still going to be an appetite for these things to develop and become something?
100%, because don't forget, we have mass adoption here. We've never entered a bear market in mass adoption. It has not happened yet. So you can go.
Well, I'm going to stop you there. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by mass adoption? Because that's a metric that needs defining.
Mass adoption, you're talking about major banks, major businesses coming to our space, major corporations. You've got a lot of really large companies coming. I mean, if you look at some purchases of Bitcoin that are being made, 12 billion million, I mean, crazy stuff. Countries are converting cryptocurrencies to their currencies right now. So there's just a lot of changes that have happened from 2017. And a lot of people are sitting here charting, saying, oh, well, this happened and we're going to go here. And there's a $200 support. And if we break the support, we're going here. Now, if they really knew what they're talking about, they would open up a little corner store and call them some fortune tellers, make a shitload of money on guessing who's going to win the next ball game. So really, nobody knows anything. And if somebody claims they know something, they're wrong. We also have an election year in the United States. And when you have an election year, they're going to be tossing a lot of stimulus stuff at us. And guess what? They don't want things to go bad because they want some blue out in the government. So I think that I don't guess. I don't try to analyze what's going to happen. I'm not going to say, Ethereum's going to be at its high, it's going to be its low. It's going to do what it's going to do. I personally see a big future in NFTs, crypto. I think that we're going to see passports, driver's licenses, documentation, real estate mortgages. We're going to see real estate loans. We're going to see fractionalized real estate purchases. So I feel like the NFT space is not just going to be all about JPEGs and 3D glasses and maybe some kind of a goblin. I think there's going to be a little bit more than everybody thinks.
So for me, there's two interesting components to all of this, which is I am a human and I have purchased an NFT and I have a small talent that nobody knows about, and I can now funnel my talent through this NFT. But there's also a degree to which we have, I'm an owner of an ape. I have zero talent, but I do know somebody with talent. And now I can partner up with them and we can both turn this NFT into a business together. And I suspect that's probably the bit that's missing here, is connecting the people who have the talent with the people who got lucky and bought the apes at a good moment, and figuring that out. And doesn't it feel a little bit like the bit that's missing in all of this is some kind of agency that connects all of this together? And I wonder if you had any thoughts on that, on representation.
That's a very actually interesting analogy, and I like that idea. And I think that yes, there's definitely something that an agency could help, but what's really missing here, it's not the agency, it's the people's creativity. Say, you know what, I have an ape. I know who I can call and make this happen. Why do we need it? We all talk about decentralization. Here's your chance to prove it. If you start bringing agencies in, you're centralized now.
Building a motion capture volume at the studio, and we'll take a bunch of these different characters and we will imbue them with life through our own voice acting and motion capture and physical performance, but in real time in Unreal Engine, or wherever we decide we want to be, in Unity, whatever. But the IP component for those characters and each specific voice that they inhabit is such an important piece of my roadmap for the next 12 months. It's figuring that out, setting up a license deal for each and every character that we then bring into this sort of mad soap opera that we're doing. And that's why, for me, what's missing is like people who do it and share the journey and share what they're doing and share how they got there and all the pitfalls of it. And then we start to get to some kind of, not rules or regulations, but like kind of guidance or best practice. And then other people can follow along and do the same thing, and they don't have to beat down those walls. So that's hopefully where I'm going to go with this. We're just going to experiment, test stuff out, probably fail along the way, but really see what we can do to show how you can take a simple image and imbue it with this spirit and life that can really generate revenue as its own piece of IP.
Well, see, if everybody thought the way you did, then this whole situation be much easier, because that's the thing. You have to learn how to do this. Don't just wait for the founder to bring it to you. Don't just wait. Don't sit there and wait for the founder of 5, 8, 9, 10,000 PFP say, you know what, we're going to do this, and you're going to be involved. Go do something. Make it happen. Make it work. We've got a lot of hours in the day. Make it work. And if you make it work, you can make it work for other people and for the project. So I feel like a lot of holders, and I'm not just talking about NFT holders, should be helping the companies and the projects, because we're new in this space, and there's a lot of very talented people out here who could really help.
Are you aware of feature.io?
No.
Okay, so Feature is run by a guy called Stephen Eilers. He's a motion capture, visual effects wizard. He worked on The Matrix. He's set up the platform that did the licensing deal for the Bored Apes that are going in the Coinbase interactive film. So he ran that deal, but he also...
I think I heard that. Okay, I did hear that.
Yeah. And then he's also the one that set up the NFT campaign for Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix.
Right. Okay, I know who that is, yeah.
So tomorrow, they're launching their IP platform on Feature. So they're going to have a complete set of tools for IP management and licensing, everything else, which I cannot wait for.
Yeah, I did hear about that. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm super excited about that.
So I think that I guess what I think people probably just feel scared of is that entertainment business and legalities in Hollywood, it just feels so out of reach and like not for them or not for me. And I think probably the hardest bit is going to be convincing people that they do belong there in a way.
I think that it's the future, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Hollywood, because we are worldwide. We have studios all over the world, like even in UK, in Australia, and Ukraine. So you don't have to wait for Hollywood. There could be other people that are very talented, have been trying to get into Hollywood for the last 20, 30 years and haven't been able to make it. So you really can get into the space through other avenues besides waiting for Hollywood. So if you're afraid of Hollywood, maybe you'll be fine with Bollywood.
I think there's also a degree to which we've had YouTube. I started creating on YouTube back in 2012, and that was still that wasn't the early, but like it's a very different beast now. We've had the Instagram, we've had TikTok. There is going to be a TikTok of the metaverse. There's going to be a place in which content creation is
look at Instagram. They're changing their platform. Look at Facebook. They're changing their platform. Twitter is doing something different. It's going to be a lot of changes. We haven't seen much yet. We've only touched the tip of the iceberg. I think the people will be here and wait it out and chill out when there's a little bit of a bear market. Go take a vacation for a few days. Don't just sit there and keep looking at CoinMarketCap and trying to make guesses. Go spend some time with your family. Go watch a game. Do something different. And if you're here in the long term, it's the same thing that happened with people that got into real estate in the beginning, or people who got into Bitcoin in the beginning. You wait it out. You ride it out. You don't just, it's never going to be green all the time. And if you're expecting that, get out.
There's no doubt that I think people underestimate how hard creative endeavors actually are. And I think they underestimate how hard startups are. I always used to say, like, making a film, it's guaranteed to fail. It's like the hardest thing you can do because it just shouldn't work. And like anyone who actually managed to get a film made and distributed, hats off. It's basically impossible. It's one of the hardest things to do. But there's something so joyful about the way people just kind of spontaneously become creative in this space. And I know it's easy to shit on, it's not real art, it's fugly and everything else. But it's like, yeah, but you got to start somewhere, right? You've got to get through these phases and encourage people and allow these things to take shoot wherever they need to take shoot. But I'm deeply worried that this bear market will just sort of crush the weird, odd people that have the best ideas and push them out. And we'll lose all of that and become homogenous again and boring. Because the weird stuff that we saw with the NFT space was what made it so fun.
The people that are going to get pushed out, they need to go. There's going to be new people that are coming in here that are going to be more creative, more interesting, will have better ideas. It's just, you can't change what's inevitable. So you just have to let it be. I don't stress. I don't worry. You have to kind of look at the history of this. And for me, I agree with you. There's nothing like satisfying about creating a film. I've created films, music videos. I've shot over 135 music videos, like top-notch music videos. So I've casted, I've worked on Seinfeld. I mean, I've been on a lot of stuff. And there's a really interesting thing about creating. And I feel like I got that feeling back with NFTs, like creating a collection, creating a PFP, creating a community. So I get that here. But there's a lot of negativity here, just like you'll have in Hollywood. There's a lot of people with budding and questioning and doing this and this and that. So I think some of those people have to go. They got to go back to McDonald's. We got to get creative people back in here. And those people that are selling Happy Meals, they got to go back to doing that.
Yeah, well, it was definitely one of the most heartening things as someone who was creating content and came from the background that I came in and started piling whatever I had into the films I was making, to see genuine film people, genuine creative people find a place here and start to really call it home. So anyway, tell me a little bit more about Apocalyptic Apes, what your plans are for that, because I know you've got things on the horizon, but like, I guess you launched at just about the right time before everything went to hell.
We actually sold out our Apocalyptic Apes on Christmas Day. We sold out our collection of the Queens in 3 hours, maybe a few weeks ago. And we have a very loyal following. We have great people. We have a real community. And I know a lot of people think they have a real community, but a real community does not consist of giveaways. A real community consists of people knowing who each other are. I know people, what they do. I know where they live. I know what medication they take or don't take. I know what drinks I know how much weed they have a day. I know which people work for Uber Eats, and I know which people take care of their kids that need special help. So we've become not just a community, become a friendship. So like if you come into our space, you'll notice people help each other. They talk to each other. Somebody needs something, that we're there for each other. So it's not just a community about NFTs. It's a community about friendship. And that's what's made the Apocalyptic Apes and the Apocalyptic Queen so special.
Yeah, the NFT haters never see any of that. They just see GM, and then they walk away because they don't get it. And you kind of have to respect the culture a little bit. But where's Apocalyptic Apes headed? Can you give us a glimpse of?
While you guys are panicking about Ethereum or Luna, if you're still buying, I don't recommend, not financial advice. We're building and creating value for our holders. So we're doing something called the Apocalypse now, and that's going to be insane. And we're going to announce that probably in the next few weeks. We're also going to have breeding. We're going to have staking. We're also going to have apocalyptic UFC events, Bellator. We have a lot of fighters that we work with. We have a lot of collaborations with Golden State Hemp. We have Click NFT with Mike Tyson coming up. Omri Caspi, a lot of NBA players that are a part of our project, soccer players, football, MLB. And one of the biggest things is we're going to be having every year, we're going to have an apocalyptic convention center, and we're going to be doing this free. We're going to be inviting musical guests and people to come out and see what's happening and speakers, because I really don't believe in charging people, $8, $6, $10, $12,000 to come to an NFT conference just to listen to a few speakers and lose a lot of money, because it is expensive for some people, especially different countries. And a lot of people don't get to go and they feel kind of crappy. So I want to be able to create a service. I want to be able to create concerts. We're going to be doing a lot of IRL. We're going to be creating value for our holders. And the biggest thing Apocalyptic Apes are going to be doing is we're going to be really, really pushing on these IP rights. I mean, hardcore pressing. I can't really announce all of it today, but if you're going to have a queen, if you're going to have an ape, you'll be really happy with time to come.
Sounds interesting. And I'm curious about this board of apes, because I saw that was part of your portfolio of activities. What's that all about?
So Board of Apes was created by me, Stecky, Nikki Diamonds, and there's a few other Bored Ape guys. And we are working on MetaDrag, which is our first project. That's our race game, which is cool with some serious IP rights. And then we're also going to be bringing safety to the space with other people, because there's a lot of devs out there that people don't trust. There's a lot of community managers people don't trust. So one of the things that Bored Apes are going to be doing is we're going to be kind of like the Sony Universal of the space. So when you come to us, you're going to be able to get safety, creativity, and assistance in launching your own project.
So it's an incubation studio. I think that's how you call it.
Think of Spielberg. You're going to go to Spielberg. You're going to get a movie. Most likely, it'll be pretty good. You're not going to get a bad movie. And that's kind of how we look at ourselves. And we've got some of the smartest people in MetaDrag and Board of Apes. And we have an IP attorney on staff.
Yeah, it sounds interesting. So if I wanted to come to you with a project, and what would I get from you? What could I expect from you through Board of Apes?
If we're interested and we like your idea, we would get behind you and pretty much give you everything you need, from community to development, to information, legality, IP, everything.
And how do you make money off that? Do you take a percentage of the IP? How does that work exactly?
So there is going to be a way to do it. We haven't kicked it out yet. We're going to be launching MetaDrag probably in the next 3-4 weeks. That's our first project from Board of Apes. Once we do that, then we're going to go into the process of how that works. It's really not about creating wealth for ourselves. It's really about creating safety for the community. Because most of the guys that are involved don't really need to make money. They're just doing it because they love the space. They want to be in Web3 full time.
Well, if they're not in Web3 full time, then this is an odd time to be moving into it when all the money's drained away. I mean, I don't know if you've been through the last bear market, 1819. It's not like everyone left overnight. It was just slowly, just painfully ground down as people just, one by one, month after month, they just had enough. They just couldn't take it anymore.
I got to disagree with that. I got to disagree with you because most people don't understand. Most people believe in, if the Bored Apes gets 100,000 again, I'm going to buy one. If Mutants get to 15, I'm going to buy one. Well, here it is. Here's your opportunity. So how wealth has been made in this world is going into foreclosures, going into markets that are bearish, go and create and buying and holding and selling high. So buy low and sell high has been my motto. That's how I work. You want a great market, so you can go pay $475,000 for an ape and then sell it for 100,000. That doesn't work. So how to create wealth is buy low, sell high. So when you see a bear market opportunity, you do have to hedge your bet. I'm not gonna lie to you. You do have to hedge your bet. You can't just be 100% in one thing, but you also have to follow the money trail. So if the money's moving somewhere else, move with it for a little bit and then come right back. Because if you look at how the transfer of wealth has been made throughout the years, it's always moved together. These guys move together. The wealthy people move together. Whether they move to real estate, whether they move to something else, you just have to follow the money trails.
Well, that's fair enough. You've been doing this a long time. I've got one last question for you, which is regarding the contradiction between you have a founder team, which is built the project and has designed this thing, but then you have the individual owner. At what point do you kind of feel compelled to take over from the owners and build something? Because I suspect there are a lot of projects where the founders will give up in this next phase, but you're an owner of that NFT. What can someone who owns that NFT do to keep the fire burning, or create something that doesn't rely on the foundational floor price being good to still be something of value? Or should they just give up and go to a project where there is value in a good community?
That's financial advice.
No, it's not. It's career advice. So I'm saying you have an affinity for instance, like Pudgy Penguins. Pudgy Penguins have. Great. Sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, no. I'm very familiar with Pudgy Penguins and the Bears that I bought right after the Pudgy Penguins that looked like them. And I feel like a lot of communities push the owners to go walk away from the project because when this, when that. I think give a project some time to work. Give them, let's say you get into Pudgy Penguins. Okay, it's been a while. Are they still around? I don't know. I haven't looked at Pudgy Penguins in a long time. But great example. Contact the team, contact Doug. What are you guys doing? What's happening? Is there something we should be doing? Is there something we should be waiting for? If you feel good about it, hang out. If not, move on. Or sometimes what I do is I move on to another project. I don't sell my projects. I hold on. I'm a diamond holder. And I just found that one of the projects I invested 7 months ago is doing something huge right now. So sometimes you have to give these projects time to work. Sometimes the devs and the founders do have to give the keys and say, here's our keys to our palace. We suck. Do something. So it really depends on the project. If you hear some background noise right where I'm at, that's my project right now. I'm at my development site. I have a house I'm building right now. So literally, like, what I'm trying to do, when I say diversify, I diversify. So it's perfect that you hear that, not because it's great to have noise, but just so you understand, hedge your bets, do something different. Don't just sit in one space and wait for it to happen. Do something. That's what a lot of people sit there. They buy a pudgy penguin. Great. This is going to retire me. I'm going to become a pudgy penguin queen or king. No, not going to happen for you like that. You have to work other things. You have to do other things. You have to constantly stay on top of things.
Yeah. Well, that's the hustle. And I think if you can manage to exist in those different spaces simultaneously, it's interesting. But like, we were talking about going full-time Web3, then that's not that diversified, is it? Which is the contradiction here. You kind of have to live this space 24/7 in order to really absorb the full meat of it.
Full-time Web3 could be 10 hours a day, and you could take your 2 hours and do something different with that.
How dare you? How dare you? It's 24/7, my friend. We do not sleep.
Well, no, I'm not that I've been an example of anything different, but full-time Web3 can also be, okay, you know what? I'm going to get my 12 Ethereum I just earned from my project. I'm going to take 6 of those and I'm going to convert it to USD and just sit and wait just in case I need to hedge my bet a little bit. So full-time doesn't mean full-time stupid. It just means full-time knowledge, but you still have to hedge your bets.
Okay. So last question for you. If someone is interested in really exploring IP rights, where should they go? Can they come to you? Can they come to Bored of Apes? What should be the first place they look?
Well, depending on the project. If they're Apocalyptic Apes, we'll make announcements. If they're Apocalyptic Queens, we're gonna let you know what's going on. But also Google IP rights, Google intellectual property, contact some people that work with intellectual property. You may have a coffee shop, and your coffee shop may just not be doing much right now. Stick one of the apes on your coffee shop. Start sending those coffee bags to people. Start creating your own IP rights too. Don't just sit there and wait. Make things happen. If you have a Etsy store, or you may be in UK and you may have a water company, you might want to take one of those apes or queens and put them right on a water company, and kids are going to dig drinking water that's got little pictures of cute apes on them rather than something that says something else. So there's lots of ways we can do this ourselves. There's lots of ways we can talk to founders, but take the project into your own hands and really look at IP rights, what they mean, understand it. I feel like people need to educate themselves on IP rights.
Well, that's probably exactly the right place to stop. Fity, thanks so much for taking the time. I enjoyed this conversation. It's good to keep it real and speak to someone who's a Hollywood OG like yourself. Thank you so much. And best of luck with Apocalyptic Apes. I'm sure it's going to see some interesting times ahead. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Pop into our space later. Come hang out.
I will do. Thank you, sir. Have a good one.
Thanks for having me.
Lovely. Cheers then. Bye-bye. So it's my very great pleasure to introduce Brice, Budke, and I'm sure that's not how you pronounce your name, but that's how I'm going to pronounce it today, and Zeek, Earl. They are the filmmaking team behind a really beautiful indie sci-fi film called Prospect, starring Pedro Pascal, who's just blown up since he was on Game of Thrones. And they're now making moves into Web3 with a very interesting story-driven project. And of course, because I am an indie filmmaker myself, this is just like an absolute pleasure to introduce genuine, real filmmakers with the film that I've seen and loved to the show. Welcome, guys. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much.
So listen, why don't we start with you telling me your story and how you've got to where you are now? Because I know that you're frustrated about the film industry. Like, I mean, I was too. So I feel your journey, but I'd love you to articulate for people watching this, why it is that you've ended up in Web3 in the way that you have.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, Brice and I made a movie together called Prospect. And that movie took probably 10 years to get together. I mean, it was my first feature film that I directed, the first feature film that Brice produced. And, it was a passion project. It is a space Western with a really deep, detailed world. And it took years and years of development, not just to get financed and get ourselves kind of into the industry, it's always a big deal to kind of break through as a first-time filmmaker and get that first movie financed. But it also, like, there were just years put into developing this universe. We actually, like, by the end of it, had a Wikipedia that was like outside of the script, that was just like all of the detail around the edges that just kind of informed the central story. And we made a short film. We made this, like, Bible of concept art that was inspired by Joe Dvorsky's Dune. Have you seen that documentary? This is just a little bit of an aside.
Of course, yeah. It's Nick, like Nick Winding Refn turns up in it. You're like, how are you two friends?
Yeah,
it's like the
exactly. It's so good. It's so good. So totally a plug for that documentary.
Yeah.
But, like, they created this, like, massive Bible of concept art that, to me, I was like, that's what I want to do. This overwhelmingly shows that I have a vision for what I want. And that, the level of investment. So we did that, and, several years of financing deals, fell apart and would come together and fall apart. And then finally one stuck. And so it just took such a long time to get this movie made. And to get it made, we had to do something that's completely normal, completely industry standard, and it's that we had to sell the IP. We just signed it away for a screenwriting fee, which, if you were to actually, like, look at the work invested, I would be making like 50 cents an hour. Versus, like, and then that's, like, first time filmmakers make all sorts of sacrifices like that. At the time, I didn't think twice about it. I was just like, so excited that, someone was going to finance my movie. But essentially the way the film industry works is that the creative teams that put in all of this effort, often in a very kind of speculative sense, have to essentially give away their baby in order to let it live. And why this has kind of come up again is that after Prospect, and has now been released, and it really kind of took a year or two to kind of garner this kind of cult following. Particularly, it hit Netflix during the pandemic, which is like when it really blew up. That was, to me, kind of the actual release of the movie, because the actual indie release, like, didn't make a lot of noise. And we found that we just have such limited options in continuing that universe. It's just so mired in, like, this legal framework that ultimately we don't have any ownership in, that it just seems so backwards to the way even a lot of the rest of the world works. Like, like in tech, for example, if you have a tech startup and you get venture capital, you don't give away, like, everything. Like, that's something that's kind of unique to the arts. And I think it really is because of the system, this highly centralized, powerful system, can take advantage of the passion of creators who just will do anything to get something made. And so now that, we've been lucky enough that our film kind of gained a following, that it did well on Netflix. Netflix, like, wants to talk to us about making new stuff. But as we've looked at all those deals, it's kind of like, well, I would just be signing on to be an employee of Netflix and just, again, giving all my ideas away. And the other thing that hasn't kind of sat well is that our ethos in filmmaking is also a little unique. To get Prospect made, we opened our own production design shop. It had a budget of around $3.5 million, which for this, again, this level of, like, really deep original world is pretty low, because we were, like, making spaceships, like physically making spaceships, making spacesuits, shooting out in a rainforest. We were doing all this really heavy practical stuff. And the only way we could do it on an indie budget was to get all of our friends, like, literally rent a warehouse. Our film budget had, like, line items for screwdrivers, and we just did it all of ourselves. And it was, like, the most fun, exciting, like, utopian working environment, because you got to gather all these people around passionately around this one idea. And that's just fundamentally also not how the film industry works. That's not how it's structured and incentivized. And we're, like, discontent, with how IP works. We're discontent with, like, the structure of how, even just, like, the creative bureaucracy of production design. Like, we think that hopefully, I mean, obviously see where this is going. We're hoping that Web3 allows us to reinvent all of it and try it, like, a totally new, fresh way.
Well, I think there's plenty to dig into here, because people who don't make films don't understand why films cost as much as they do. And they also don't understand why they take as long as they take. And the plain and simple truth of it is, it's a crapshoot. Like, films do not make money. If you go to the film market in Cannes, it's one of the most sobering experiences of your life, because you go and you sit there, or like any big film market, and you are suddenly confronted with how much product there is, because there are so many films now. And like from when I guess we were aspiring to make the movies we wanted to make, that was not the case. And I remember when I was shooting music videos, you would write a treatment, and then that treatment become the basis of a marketing campaign. And you're like, yeah, but you paid me to shoot a video. You didn't pay me for all the creative. I just gave that to you.
Yeah.
But and then you go, well, yeah, but George Lucas kept the merchandising rights. Like what?
Well, it's his fault. It's his fault because he did
exactly
that. Now
fault.
they don't let anyone keep anything.
No. I think it was also South Park. They got some weird caveat. I mean, weird for the time, but it was around like non-broadcast rights. And then it ended up in the streaming and film era. And they, essentially made an entire career out of this like contract loophole, similar to George Lucas, right? And it's like, that's not a model. Like we need something better than that.
Yeah. And people have tried to disrupt the model. There's been various ways of trying to disrupt the distribution model, because the distribution with all was so painful. Mm-hmm. Like just getting your film into theaters was just it was a really hard thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just gonna before we get there. First day of shooting, slate one. That moment when, and this is it. How good is that? How good is that? That first slate when it's 1-1, you just go, this is it. We're doing it. I mean, I didn't spend 10 years.
I don't know. My stress level week one was, I think, way too off the charts to enjoy anything. It was maybe like really three weeks in that I'm like, oh, I think I can actually do this. And then I can start having some fun with it. I feel like I was too nervous for like a long time.
Oh my God.
Yeah. To me, that slate one day was the day we finally got to sign the lease on the warehouse, right? Like that to me was the like, oh, this is like, this dream is coming true, right? Because it was this like big, almost like sea change moment of like, we had been making the film, for years and years, right? And it was finally this thing of like, oh, I can like actually spend money. I can actually hire all the people who've been working for free up to this point and like get everyone around, and we can like paint the walls our color palette, and we can like spray paint Prospect wherever.
Well, I think now I think about it, part of it is like, we come from doing, commercials and short films. It was really like the first time working extensively with major talent was on my first feature film. And I was terrified to direct Jay Duplass and Pedro Pascal. Like, on an indie film, you don't get like extensive prep time. We had like a handful of meetings. You're not really getting to know these people until you're like on set. And I was just like, like how, like, what are, I'm afraid they're going to expect something of me as a director that I just don't have. I don't know what it is, but I'm not confident that I have it. I'm not saying that to anybody, hiding it, but like, I don't have that confidence. But then the realization is after a few days of shooting, you're like, oh, these guys are like really, really talented, and they need less from me than all the other actors I've ever worked with. Yeah. This is so easy. Like every major director, it's like, not like you just like, if you're getting like A-list cast, like, no, this is a gravy train. You're good to go.
Yeah, that's always the way, isn't it? If you cast well, you're golden.
That's
because
the job.
Really, you
that's
just need to point the camera at someone and let them do their job. But I understand. Like when you put your heart and soul into these things and build all of this world, it's very hard to let go of that and allow someone else to make their piece of it. That's always been the hard bit for me. It always gets into editing. I'm like, I need to be in the edit. I need to control every frame. And like, no, you need to walk away. Because watching that first cut is one of the worst experiences of your life.
So painful.
And the thing is, like, I know you guys know, but like people watching this don't understand how hard it is to get a film made. Like making a short film is easy. You can do it with like $100 in 48 hours. It's really not difficult. You need a character, a world, a problem. Making a feature film, whole different story. And like, the thing is, like, you set up sales deals, and by the time you've made the film, the entire landscape of film distribution is completely changed at that point. It was like, oh no, what do you do?
That's exactly what happened to us. Yeah.
So what's telling here is that if we were to strip away the word film from what you've done and simply say, you've made this project, it's got this IP attached, it's got this great story, it's got this rich universe, and then you said, oh, it's an NFT project, you would get the money like that. You would be able to sell it next week and make money, not spend all of your money. And I guess that's the rewiring that we have to go through to think that that's even possible, that actually, there's a different model of doing this. And I think there's a lot of questions to be answered here. A lot of it to do with IP royalties, but also distribution as well. Distribution's like, it's my bugbear. It really is. But I'm curious for you guys, how you ended up being there and then daring to come into Web3 and seeing whether you could plant your flag here.
Yeah, I mean, it was just like looking at our options. We were developing, technically are developing projects, with like traditional entities, and we just got bit by the bug. I mean, I think the other kind of revolutionary thing here that we have to throw in is like, and this actually ties together a lot of what you've just been saying, is that it's incredibly difficult to market original IP. And this is like, I watched this painfully with my own movie that, this was an indie film. This only had a tiny marketing budget, and it just took so long to break through the noise. And it eventually did, but it took years because it like had to develop like this layer of the fan base. And then that bubbled up this, and then this, and then it finally was accessible on Netflix. And it was this, long thing because we just couldn't pay to like get it in front of everybody. It had to happen naturally. And that's obviously why you see so much derivative content. And by that, I mean sequels, franchises that are just beat to death. And like, it's such a huge risk for major studios, of which there are, less and less players in the space every day. And it's so safe just to kind of keep making something, even adapting like a board game or a serial. People know the name. It like helps break through the noise. So you end up with all this stupid shit. And kind of what we're seeing now, more actually even since the last few months, since launching like our Discord and starting to build a community around our new project, The Fringe, is we're going to develop this fan base like way ahead of the movie ever coming out. We're going to have a really core group of people that are going to be super passionately following along, for this long, development process, so that when that film is actually ready to be released, we're going to be so much we're going to be at such a higher starting point than, any traditional movie. And it's to the point where when I started this project, I thought selling NFTs was really going to be kind of a means to the end. This is just a way to finance a movie. And that's really not what it's about at all. Like, NFTs are an interactive storytelling medium. Like, this is like some actually pretty exciting stuff. So you can kind of think of it like, just to be quick, The Fringe is it's kind of a space Western universe. It's out on the outskirts of space. There's no like corporations or real, kind of governments out there yet. It's the Wild West. You have, explorers, scientists, miners, prospectors, but also like pirates and outlaws. And it's this real just kind of fascinating no man's land of this kind of scattering of planets. And we had, we have a script that's one story that will be the flagship story in this universe. But in this type of universe, it's kind of like a little bit more of like a grounded Star Wars-esque universe. There is so much storytelling that can be done in totally different mediums. I mean, we're still pre-mint. We haven't minted our NFT yet, and yet we've already gotten a very passionate group of people that are going to be developing tabletop games. And we're even starting like to develop themes that are sort of prequels to the film that'll come out in these other formats. There's this other kind of demand for graphic novels, and we're like thinking about that. And then there's just Web3 as itself, as a storytelling medium. Let me give an example. We have been throwing out random art. So our NFTs they're called drifters, and they're characters within this universe. So everybody who buys an NFT will have a character that exists in the Fringe. And so we've been kind of, throwing out example characters, and we threw out this one. There's this kind of gnarly looking guy with a big antenna. And I was just looking at him and like, I'm going to come up with a fun backstory, just real, like, just off the top of my head. And it was, okay, he was part of a mining colony, and then He kind of got thrown out. He went into the wilderness and started eating psychedelics. He kind of ruined his brain. And he has become like a pirate radio operator. He just like jams everyone's signals. He just trolls people. He plays annoying music. He just kind of is like the troll of the mining colony. And we called him the Shriek. And the Shriek, like, threw him out on the server just as like an art drop, like instant like success. People were super into this character. And they're like, well, what do we do with this? And so we actually created the Shriek as a character on the Discord. And the Shriek did to like people on the Discord what he does to the mining colony. He's a troll, just starts like interrupting conversations, but in like the heavy like fringe dialect. People are loving to like interact with this like character on the server. And then we're trying to think, what can we do with that? We actually started creating some of the Shriek's broadcasts. And inside the broadcasts were puzzles, and people solved the puzzles, and they found the Shriek's Twitter account. And it like eventually all ended with like a music NFT drop. And it was this thing we were sort of improvising as we went. And the Shriek is now the most famous character in the Fringe. And he wasn't even in the first draft of the script we're working on. Now the Shriek like has to be in the script. But we've already created like a fan favorite character like before finishing like the script. Like this is just totally changes the rules of the game. And now I'm like so excited to start just experimenting in all these weird ways on expanding this universe so that by the time that film comes out, like there's already going to be a following ready to receive it.
Yeah, totally. I did exactly the same thing like back at the end of 2020. And I did a week of just improvisational storytelling, figuring stuff out. I had a Telegram channel, and I was just playing around with what people were doing and responding to it in real time. And then filming like a short film that day that had like clues and things. And then at the end of the week, there was like they could solve a puzzle and figure out what was going on. And it turned out it was a set of private keys to a wallet. And it wasn't like a fake wallet. This was a real wallet that had all my tokens in it.
Oh, shit.
And then they went in and they stole them all. And then the whole experience was like the guilt trip that I gave them after that to make them give me my tokens back. But like there was a significant number of tokens, and they all just piled in and stole them. And then they went, oh shit, who are we? I called the whole thing the rug pull, but they thought they were going to get rugged. And actually I rugged myself, and they were the ruggers. And they were like, whoa. Who are we? What are we? And then like, over the course of the weekend, I was like, I know I can pressure them into giving these tokens back. And I managed to get nearly all of them back. And then like 6 months later, like an equal amount of the ones that hadn't come back did come back. But it was, the most interesting thing was incredible. It's non-linear production. That's what it is. And it's coming from the film world where every single decision you need to make has to be preordained and pre-mapped out, to the point where it becomes kind of almost like a factory process when you're on set. Although if you have the right kind of set, you can still improvise around things. But a lot of commercials, I'm sure you've been through this. You sit there with the ad agency, and you sit there with the client, and you go through storyboards. And storyboards are not a film, but like I've sat in meetings where we've had to animate the storyboards to time. So you have like, it's 30 seconds. Oh, yeah. And you're like, why am I here? Here's a Lego set. Here's a jigsaw puzzle. You just put it together. You don't need me. And that whole process is so uninspiring. Like that being able to, I remember Ridley Scott used to say, I don't need to do storyboards, but I do these Ridleygrams for my team so they know, but I'll get on set and I can see it's going to be this. And then they know kind of how to work within the environment. But of course you have so much pressure from your AD saying, we have to get the day shot. We have to complete the day. And that's the thing you hear, you have to complete the day. And then you've got your script supervisor going, did you realize that the pencil is actually over there? I don't know how annoyed you got with the script supervisor, but they are the most annoying people in the entire world for a reason.
I mean, our script supervisor was actually a lovely person on Prospect, but it was amazing how much time I spent worrying about continuity to realizing that it does not matter. There is always a way to edit around it. And I definitely going into film number 2, going to feel way less pressure. Yeah,
exactly. And that's the thing, right? Making a good film in your first film is pretty unlikely. And if you do, then you're in great shape. But like, you need at least one film to figure that stuff out. But this,
oh my gosh, yeah.
This, I think the thing that was interesting for me is when I stepped away from being a filmmaker because what I realized that I enjoyed was just storytelling and like getting people wrapped up in a story or a narrative, or making them think it's this, and then suddenly they go, it's over there, and staying ahead of your audience. I think that's the really fun part of what we do. And I think it's also what audiences in Web3 really want. They want to feel like there's something they don't know, and that if they work hard, they can figure it out. But actually, they pretend as if they know everything. And if you let them think they know everything, then you've lost. And a lot of projects are so low effort. They put these things out and they haven't thought ahead of time what that experience and what that journey is going to be like. The danger, of course, is that you're so clever and you spend so much time spinning out story that it kind of it gets caught in its own wheels a little bit. So there always need to be these action points, and always need to be like what are we making and when are we making it? And I'm seeing a lot of very expansive universes with story attached to them and beautiful IP and everything else. And you're like, okay, well, where are you in 2-3 years time? How are you going to keep this Web3 community engaged for that period of time when you need to make a film, and that, or make an animation, or all these other things? And that's going to be a tough thing, just to keep the soap opera spinning for as long as you need to.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I was more worried about it actually, like when we started, when all these things were just concepts. And now like this community coming together on Discord has just like, despite even the fact that the price of ETH is like plummeting, like I am not too concerned, because I really see the fundamentals of this thing already working. And really, I think what it is it's less about, of course, is this going to turn into a soap opera that just has to be strung along forever? But I think it's more about finding mechanisms in the community itself that are kind of empowering. People in this space don't just want to consume, like they don't just want to sit back and watch stuff come. I mean, people like that as well, but they want to participate. And it's more of like setting up this sandbox, this sci-fi Western sandbox that we can all come in and play together. And other people are pumping in energy and enthusiasm. It's not all coming from me. I would be a dry husk if it were. But it's about really forming like a functional community that actually spins out, a real universe.
And where are you thinking in terms of IP now? Where do you think you can extract value from that IP?
Oh man. I mean, the list is just like, and I mean, we have too many ideas. Brice over here, I should actually maybe like throw it to you. Brice is where I'm the filmmaker. Brice comes from, a business where he makes beautiful spreadsheets, and he can't help himself but to constantly spin out like new business ideas. And there's nothing, but Brice inside is just frothing at the idea of being fully like in the reins of an actual IP without having all the barriers. It's like Brice, unleashed.
I've got Billy Walsh. I've got Billy Walsh from Entourage in my head going, soup, soup.
I mean, taking a step back to maybe like 15 minutes ago conversation, we talked about, how there's a lot of derivative content, but I think what happens, and this will lead into what we're talking about, is you get a bunch of derivative content from studios who want to take essentially that, or, are trying to lessen their bet. And then most indie filmmakers are disincentivized from making any sort of larger IP because you have to sell it, right? So you try to find very self-contained individual stories. So you have this big gap in the market for IP that's big and meaty, but is also new, right? And I think that's where I'm very excited to be unleashed, as Zeek said, right out in the world. So I think there's a ton of opportunities that come from more collective filmmaking enterprise. Sorry about my dog, if you can hear that, by the way. Collective filmmaking enterprises that are the filmmaking team, but also we have a lot of people, we have like former bike builders, and we have like aerospace engineers from Boeing, and we have a lot of other people we've met, this is just like the prospect shop, and there's a lot of other people, cosplayers and textile designers and apparel designers, and the new people we are meeting, within our Discord and within the Fringe community that are coming from backgrounds of game design and other like 3D modelers and writers and all these other mediums. And part of this, like, we'll have the film, which will be, one way to monetize the IP, right? Is have that kind of flagship enterprise. And then that soap opera you were talking about is a bunch of these other storytelling mechanisms that can be things that are, ideally sold to a larger community outside of just this like tighter community that's building with us, that's the NFT community. But, we want to be looking at things like tabletop games, right? That, ideally are revenue positive, but even at revenue neutral, that's marketing for all the other things, right? And there's short stories and graphic novels. And then that's just in this like individual big fringe IP that we're able to spin, because essentially we can treat it like a startup where we can like take investments and see where we can go from there and grind in a way that no studio would ever do, because it's, they are not aligned to trying to make that one IP work unless they're Star Wars or Marvel. And it's like my spreadsheets tell me that we can like make that work at a much smaller level with a pretty impassioned fan base. And it's like, I think there are people out there who love Marvel and Star Wars, or even come from, a more indie background who want to dig into things like that. Like imagine if the Green Knight was something that was bigger and you could really like dive into that, Arthurian, landscape. It's like there's stories to be told, but that wasn't how they approached it, because like that's not how the incentive structure works anymore. And then on the flip side of it, we are breaking new ground, like as far as how we're bringing, Web3, how we're bringing projects through NFTs and Web3 and everything else. So there's the whole end of like, I want to help as many other filmmakers pull this off as well, right? And maybe that's revenue generating, maybe that's consulting or tooling or things from there, or maybe it's just bringing more of us along to kind of buoy the case of the fringe, right? So there's kind of two sides of the house on that one, and really looking at it from both ways of like, if we figure this out, it's like, I don't want everyone else to reinvent the wheel. It's like, let me help them along. And you see a lot of, companies that are doing that already, so like partnering with them or whatnot. But to me, there's a wide range, because we can approach this like a tech startup as opposed to approaching this like a one and done film. And so it's like the economics can play out, because you're not just making one massive bet, you're making one massive bet that then has all these spillover bets that can continue on with it.
Wow. So I've been having exactly the same thoughts and conversations with myself. And I'm going in a slightly different direction, because I'm not trying to attack the IP part of it.
Yeah.
But there's a few different pieces to this, which is you're quickly aware in this space that it's a yes culture and not a no culture. And everywhere that we've come from as filmmakers, people love to say no. They love to have the power.
Well, no, they don't actually say no. You have a really good positive meeting, and then they just disappear. Just
never.
That is, yeah. So like, there's always like, we love it, but we're gonna pass, or like, that is bit. But Web3
we'll get back to you.
Yeah.
Then nothing, just archive email and go on with your life.
The joy of the pitch. Oh gosh, you get those awkward Zoom calls where you're like they start. They're like, oh, hi, and then they go, oh, you got 8 minutes. Tell me what you got. I'm like, oh, Jesus. Okay. No, but so Web3 is very much a yes culture at the moment, and what you were saying before about helping other creatives, other filmmakers figure this stuff out. Like there has to be a tip of the spear. There has to be people that figure out best practices, or at least try stuff publicly. And where in the past you were expected to come out with a complete project or a complete set of ideas or a complete set of storyboards, that goes out the window in Web3. What you have now is a process, and it's your ability to navigate that process in real time with a community that will define whether you succeed or fail. And everything you were talking about before about improvisational storytelling, nonlinear production, it's the process. And that's what is so exciting about this, is that you can open source the process. Yeah. And then if your process is good, then this can go on forever. Yeah. And then the other part of this is that I see interoperability between story worlds. Like your character could go and have, could be a crossover with another universe that, like Cyberbrokers, for instance, is building. There's no reason why these characters cannot cross over. Communities can be introduced to each other and share like a journey together. That's the Web3 way. And that becomes much more like a metaverse. And so you see projects like Fluffwell building their own futureverse, but very much making it an open space where everyone can come and build and be part of the same massive universe of storytelling. And that's like what you were saying, not just our own community, but broader And it's like, well, what does that broader look like? Is it just people who aren't in NFTs or Web3? Well, like it's right there. It's a Zoom call away if you want it, because the positivity and like the general energy towards making stuff that actually feels kind of fun to do is overwhelming. And that's just so, it's why I get up every day and make a video every day, because like I see where this is going.
Yeah.
It's really fun. So the bit that I'm struggling with you guys is you're still making a traditional film. And I want to know why you're making a traditional film.
I'll put that one to
because I like movies. I don't think the medium's dead at all.
Well, I didn't say that. I just want to know why make a film?
Why make a film?
Yeah.
Because I'm passionate about making films.
Which bit of it are you passionate about? Are you passionate about being on set? Are you passionate about like, doing a 4-week shoot and not sleeping? What is it about it? What is
I'm
about the
passionate
film?
about making this world fully immersive. I still think that a combination of sound, cinematography, and production design can provide a atmospheric experience that's wholly unique and can be, again, kind of the leading flagship thing that sucks you in. I mean, I'm biased because I'm a filmmaker, but like, it's like I even struggle like at every film festival you go to now, there's a VR showcase. And I've seen some really fascinating things done in that medium, but there's, at this point, from what I've seen, there's way more restrictions in VR, even in 3D than there is in 2D. Just even the amount of creative control and decision-making you have, even in a flat format, still, I mean, there's new opportunities in other formats. There's still something that can't be beat, and why it's so dominant. And I'm incredibly passionate about producing it. And I think I have a fairly unique perspective on sci-fi world building and texture. And for me, it's the chosen medium.
You didn't actually answer my question. So I was asking you, why make a film? Because 90 minutes, if you have a story that specifically has to be 90 minutes, and I think there are certain films that you can't do a TV series, but if you've got this massive world, it could be an anthology. It could be a series that follows one character. That's what I mean.
I see what you're saying.
Filmmaking, cinema. You got me. I mean, I'm your guy. But like, the format is old school, and it's long, and there's a certain amount of expectations, and it's expensive.
Well, what you're talking about is distribution. Ultimately,
no, I'm talking about film.
Yeah, because the reason why you make a film is because there's distribution models to plug into, and I think this is where I don't think we're ready to reinvent. I don't think we're ready to reinvent distribution as part of this project. If someone else does it in the process, we'll be all about it. Yeah, maybe you should. I think just part of it is like, we're still like, we're not going to be able to raise the whole budget from the movie from NFTs. We could have last September, but just the reality we're staring down now is that it's not going to happen, which at this point we're putting together a plan to still keep the IP independent, but it's going to, mean tapping like film incentives, and it's going to mean maybe looking at foreign sales, more likely private equity. But in all these things, like if we're no longer making a movie, then it's like you can't even access these other tools. And so I think that's like, look, if we had managed to get in when Bored Apes did and raise like hundreds of millions of dollars, we could mess around with a lot of stuff. But I think we're at a point where we're going to be kind of a hybrid with a conventional distribution system in order to make the financial model work. But please tell me what we should be doing.
I think the other part of this, though, is we are very intentionally trying to be a bridge project, right? Where we are starting this community with both a combination of like prospect diehards who are already bringing kind of into the Web3 space, right? The NFT, crypto space. And then obviously the people already in the crypto Web3 space, right? And that's where, the core of this is building. And we will always have that core group of, NFT buyers and the, outer circle of, the halo around them, right? That's the very like crypto-centric crowd. But ultimately, like we want to bring particularly this like first flagship part of the fringe, the film, out in a medium that a more mass market is going to be able to consume it, right? And at this point in time, I would argue that films, right? Especially, TV shows are even more expensive, right? But films particularly are at that great value point of being able to be seen by a really wide group of people who don't have to be bought into crypto and Web3 and NFTs to still really love and experience this world. And for those people who have been experiencing along the way with us, building with it, following the tabletop game, graphic novels, those are going to be ancillary to the story of the film. And you're going to see the background of a character that pops up, right? You're going to get some like history that happened 100 years prior to the film, right? You're going to have all this knowledge going in that's going to make the film that much better. And to me, kind of going to your metaverse, this like interoperability, what I think the metaverse is now, right? And maybe will be the best metaverse, right? Is the one where you're really blurring the lines between, fictional and real world, right? Like when you go into a theater, right? Or you like put your phone away and watch something at home, right? When you're like really immersed into that world, you're getting like sucked across that line and are like living within this fictional world, right? And then, even if you take like Disneyland as the like prototype metaverse, right? Is like, then you go to Galaxy's Edge, right? And now you're like crossing that line again. And what I'm seeing kind of specifically with NFTs, where you can like own these characters, you can have these gated experiences, and what's going to come with VR and, metaverse, but also can now get tapped into with more like traditional mediums of, merch apparel, tabletop games, where you can start bleeding the in-worldness of the fringe and the real worldness of you as a fan. And, we're giving these fans avatars to be in the world as this drifter character, right? And so now they can start entering into these worlds and start building it with us. And to me, the metaverse is that bridging space between these fictional and real worlds, where you're no longer really sure like which one you're playing most in, right? It's like LARPing in like a more life level. Like, the idea is we want to do apparel, right? Like we're working with this apparel designer, and he designed one of the suits that's going to be in the actual drifter like PFPs. And then the idea is we want to make that actually in real life. And so it's like, okay, that's not just like a fringe t-shirt, right? Nor is it like a costume. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Right. And so I just
happen to have it. This.
It's perfect, right? It's like, and it's kind of merchy, but it's also kind of like you're in that world. Yeah. And then I think the next extension of that, if we can, pull this off, is it's not just that scorpion jacket, it's the rest of that line that Ryan Gosling's character could have decided to purchase that he didn't, right? And now it's like, it's not even just that one prop. It's like, oh, it's that whole extension of that world. And now you can buy it. It's not even in the film, but it's obviously from that film, right? It's the whatever other bug they put on besides the scorpion, right? Or it's the black one with the white back, right? And then to me, that meatiness of like being able to live in your fictional world while still being yourself and kind of LARP through things is the next iteration of like fandom, and is one where we can pull those fans as co-creators in the process. And that to me is the most exciting part of metaverse, right? It isn't Facebook's like office room that you plug into VR and hanging out, right? Like that hopefully is, not that specifically, but hopefully VR is an extension of being able to bridge those worlds. But it's more of a like mentality thing around how you're interacting with this novel IP that I think is going to blow up when people like ourselves and other creators can start making these worlds people can inhabit so many different ways and aren't encumbered by like the traditional systems. But all going back to your question of the film is like, we still need a film to bridge out to that bigger audience, because I don't want to make a film for 10,000 people, right? Like I want to make a film for millions of people and then have 10,000 people who are even in on it more and creating it with us and having these layers of fandom that people can operate in or opt into.
Yeah, no, I understand that. I guess my question is that my experience of being in this space in the last kind of 5 years, it's people have very short attention spans and they need stuff now. And like the extended lead time and development time necessarily, for a feature film it's a hard thing to keep people engaged. One of the ideas I've been kind of trying to explore is this. It's something that Blake Robbins, who was one of the kind of funders of 100 Thieves, an esports team, he's kind of put this idea out that we should be able to make it possible for people to be a full-time fan, i.e. you're a fan, you add value to a project, you're an advocate for a project. If we contextualize that relationship properly in Web3, it could be your job. And I find that the prospect of that and trying to figure that out, absolutely incredible. So you guys are trying to build a massive story world, and you're talking about distribution. Mm-hmm. My focus and my obsession right now is audience, relationship with your audience, and making it possible for people to be full-time fans, but also blowing up the distribution model completely. Because what are we issuing NFTs on? It's a network. What do we watch TV on? It's a network. It's the same bloody thing. Like your wallet is a TV, or at least it could be. It's just a thing that you receive tokens with and you view tokens. It's this horribly underused or underexploited real estate that could be, imagine wallet casting. So you stream directly into a wallet. And it's like, well, that's an interesting idea. It's still not full cinematic experience, but you could reach an audience massively at scale for peanuts. That's an interesting idea. And then, building out much bigger audiences. So you guys are doing a film. I do YouTube. YouTube is horrible. It is a shitty platform. It's a shitty environment. But man, if you do it right, there is an audience there that will go through hell with you. So what I do is I do stuff like I snort Tabasco on camera just in reference to the market. I'm just figuring out how to do that. But ultimately, I'm exactly like you. I want to do big, interesting, meaty stories. But I think where I'm different from you is that I see existing IP like Bored Apes as the tools with which I will do that. So rather than having to build out my own story world, I'm going to take existing IP and do my own spin on it. So like, take a Bored Ape and make him into a gangster or something, or take a fluff and make him like have his own cooking show or something like that. Just figuring out these different expressions of that. But the thing that keeps me honest is like, I have to do it on this insane turnaround, like just week in, week out, just taking ideas and then executing them. So it's much more like SNL. And then the other thing that's really interesting for me is Taka Collective. So you are building physical, and it's clear that like physical props, physical production, it has to be in camera is important to you. So I'm really curious where Taka Collective is at, what you have, where the warehouse is, because I want to come visit.
Yeah, so I mean, part of it is presently it's just a group of people because it was financed by Prospect, and when Prospect was over, we can't afford a warehouse lease in Seattle without a project back.
Haven't been able to afford a warehouse lease because the model doesn't bring, like the current model doesn't really allow for something like that without us having to do without us having to take on projects, that would distract us as opposed to push us forward. And part of this whole endeavor is finding a model where we can keep a group of people like that employed and together, not just on the limited durations of pre-production timelines for films, right? Like that is a wider goal.
We can make all sorts of things. We can, employ that group of people to make all sorts of cool stuff if we have this community and audience, that's on an ongoing basis. And we pull these artists out of this just kind of project by project, mentality and economy. So what's cool though is the Taka Collective though is not just sitting on their hands like waiting for Shop 2.0. Is they're all in the Discord. That's where they are. in that like our costume designer, Aiden, like we've just been all these like funny accents. We found that she's really awesome at making puzzles. And so it's less about like becoming super specific on your trade and instead becoming super focused on the world and contributing your skills in different mediums. And so right now, like it's very, very, digital that we have this, the concept artist for Prospect, Lori Greasley, who's also like a very legit NFT artist in his own right, is the lead artist making our NFT art, but he's working with, the production designer, Matt Acosta, and myself, just like you would work on a movie, but we're making, art that comes in the form of NFTs. So it's this group of people that have a wide variety of skills, but the main thing that binds them together is a creative perspective. And that creative perspective can be applied to all sorts of different mediums. That said, of course, once, the funding kind of gets going and we will open a physical location, we fully intend to kind of move the project and start kind of breaking down all those barriers between the digital and the physical side. I mean, I'm just so excited. Like we're part of holding an NFT means that you'll have the opportunity to participate in creative incubators, and that will happen on the digital side. So like we'll have like a spaceship incubator where we'll bring concept artists, the 3D modelers, like people on our team together, where then community members, if they want to be like really, really involved, can get right there in the room with us and like throw out ideas, work on developments. And then the community as a whole can vote on, the top designs. And then you'll actually get to see that spaceship physically manifest like in a shop via live streams. And it'll be hopefully just this kind of like seamless, fluid process.
I think the other part of it is being able to use these designers and builders who are more used to building real life things than sets, and thinking about the idea of building a set that exists longer than just the 2 weeks it takes to film in it, right? And building it with the idea of permanence, right? Whether it's literally that set or something you rebuild after we're using those designs, and kind of extending that idea of how people can live and interact kind of in the fringe of like, there are going to be, I don't know how much I don't want to spoil anything here. We in our Discord, I'll go different direction. Our Discord is called The Bench, is going to be the like gated area where token holders can get in, right? And there's been a big push, of everyone of wanting the bench, the idea of this like gathering place of drifters in the actual Fringe universe, and it's a gathering place of drifters in our Discord. And like, how can we make that a real place? Like, how do we build that set a place that then becomes a gathering place? And like, does the bench become a real bar is sort of the meme that is going around the Discord, right? And it's like, oh, is there a place where maybe it's like literally a bar where we serve alcohol, or maybe alcohol licenses make that hard and we serve great non-alcoholic drinks. But it's the idea of like, how do we make those spaces that bridge across? And that's a lot where that wouldn't even be an option with existing models, because I would have to, from the get-go, start with rights and distribution and marketing agreements and everything else in order to turn a set into a restaurant or a bar. Like it would be an almost deal breaker unless I was just like so on top of my agreements from day one. Right. And it's like, how hard it is to get deals. It's like, as soon as I start putting in all these weird caveats, it's like, they're just going to go with some other project that isn't asking for these weird holdouts. And so it's this idea of like with Taka specifically is I want them making sets that then people can go in and they can live on for years. Right. And maybe it's something we travel around to all, the South by Southwest and, NFT NYCs and LAs. Right. So it like extends that footprint bigger. And, or maybe they're, making the merch things we talked about, right? Like these are all plans we have kind of once we get through this heavy digital component.
It's very interesting. The plan at our end is slightly different, but it's along the same lines. Mm-hmm. I think it's very interesting because what you've just told me, basically a theme park. You're building a theme park, and it has transmedia components to it, but that's essentially what you're building. It sounds weird to say it, doesn't it? It sounds really.
In looking at like models for this one, I hate to call them a model, but it's like, I'm not super bullish on Facebook's approach to the metaverse, which is heavily digital. I am very bullish on Disney's approach, which is very transmedia, kind of their theme park plus IP, plus I'm sure they're going to add some AI.
But I also like want to even break down like what does a theme park mean? Because we all think Disneyland, we all think Disney World, but also like think about Meow Wolf, which is an artist installation in New Mexico that was built out of a bowling alley. Am I getting that right? Yeah. And it's like, it's much smaller scale, but has become like a major attraction. And I think that's part of the thing is like, we can sometimes only imagine cinematic universes at a Star Wars, like Marvel level. And I think what we're hoping is that, no, there's in between space here. And I don't know, maybe the Fringe grows to something like that in years and years. But I think there's all these steps along the way that are still super interesting and will have a huge appeal, but don't have to be on this massive, massive corporate level.
Like we could do a Meow Wolf style install in Seattle, wherever, for fractions of the cost of opening up a theme park like Disneyland, and maybe have an even better experience because people are so bought in through all the other narratives. Like I loved Meow Wolf. I spent so many hours in that building because I was trying to like figure out the story and figure out everything else. And what if that story was nested within a larger universe that I was already dug into, right? I would be like, I wouldn't be able to keep myself from going back there. So I'd be like, oh, what are these other nuggets of this universe I can go, and I can just sort of like cosplay LARP through this whole world that we've like built. And that can be done at millions of dollars, which within film world is like, that's just another film project, right? Where, you know,
a very small film project
of dollars. Yeah. Well,
there's something awful, isn't it? When you've built a set and you've gone through that process and you step on the set and it's this beautiful thing, when that set is struck and they just break it down and then they throw it in the bin.
Goes in a dumpster,
It's just heartbreaking. Like, you know, you can't keep every prop, but you wish you could. And, you know, at Weta Workshop, they have hundreds of thousands of orc items and stuff in there, but you can't keep everything. But there's no doubt that films are incredibly wasteful, but so much artistry goes into these things, you know, and it just gets thrown in the bin. It's heartbreaking. It's awful. It really is. So the thing we're doing is we're going the other way. We're going fully digital, and we're using Unreal Engine and motion capture. And the reason we went that route is because I live in a tiny town in the Netherlands, and it's just very difficult for me to get anywhere very quickly. And I realized that all these PFP characters are digital. They will have 3D assets. They're going to be very, very quickly, easily riggable in Unreal. And then I can just jump in a suit and be that character and then start playing around with it and do it in real time. But the main thing for me is I want to be able to come up with an idea, shoot it in the morning, publish in the afternoon, but as a character. And so we invested in a Vicon motion capture system. And I think us having that studio and also having that capacity, it will be something that we can lend out to other projects. So if you had a fully CG character that you needed specific mocap for, you just call me up and say, listen, could you do these movements for us? And we could just give it to you. Cool. And you wouldn't have to spend a fortune on a motion capture studio. That's where I want to plug into all of this. Yeah. You have that facility, have the holodeck. That's cool. Basically plug in our universe and our ability to build out a little mini scene for your world. Those are the conversations I want to be having, because that's something you don't want to be investing in and don't want to be spending, but we have it. Yeah. And you know me now. So that's like, that could be really fun. And that network all around the world could be really fun. But I have the luxury of being able to press a button, and now I'm on Mars, press another button. Now I'm on, you know, in the desert somewhere. That's where Unreal gets fun. Making it look good, Uncanny Valley, all that stuff, haven't sold it yet. No. Nowhere near that yet. But, you know, I could have a guitar that I'm playing, and when I play certain notes that it triggers, like it starts raining if I play an A minor chord, you know, stuff like that. That's fun. So there's just going in weird and wonderful different directions, but they're not incompatible at all. That's really fun. Brice, you reminded me of something, actually.
Yeah.
You brought up The Green Knight.
Yeah.
Why in particular The Green Knight? Of all the films you could have picked out, why that one?
I think I know why, Brice. It's because you got super excited that A24 marketed a tabletop game as a promotional for The Green Knight, which was not like, I don't know, it was, for them, it was more of a marketing gimmick. But I think it did just like hint at the idea of a more indie level, like full cinematic universe, which, I mean, The Green Knight really isn't. It really is just an indie film. But it's, you know, I think it's a movie that both Brice and I, you know, really like. But that it does sort of like, you can imagine other stories like taking place, in that universe. And it is something that is still relatively, what was the budget of Green Knight? Like 10 or something?
I think it might have been closer.
Relatively low budget movie. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the tabletop game I was smitten. I think part of it is it felt I love that A24 feels like one of the few only distributors who feel like they're operating at an indie level and trying to engage the audience in different unique ways that isn't so formulaic from one to one, and are using a very heavy merch focus, which I think they could do better. And I'm hoping we can do better that brings people kind of more immersed into that world. I think that's one, right, of that. And it felt like one of the A24 movies that felt the most kind of sci-fi fantastical, kind of within that hinting at a larger world. I mean, just as far as me just like riffing, sitting off here. But it's one where I see the extension of Green Knight did this this tabletop RPG game. And it's like, that it feels like it's scratching the surface of what you could do by expanding your universe via something that is independently exciting to interact with, on top of just a movie. And it's like, what else can you do there, right? That would be why.
Yeah, I was gutted when I saw it, because I studied that when I was at university, and it's an amazing poem. It's an amazing, its place in the medieval poetry canon, the time it was made. It's like, basically what it's saying is that the chivalric code of Arthurian knights is bullshit. And no one had ever done that before. Yes. And it's such a powerful metaphor for so many of the systems that we find ourselves in today. I wanted to make that film, not the way they did it, not at all. I wanted to do it as sci-fi. I wanted to make the Green Knight an android, because the Green Knight it's looking at specifically this paradox that Gawain finds himself in. And if I ever found myself in front of the Star Wars universe saying, pitch me a Star Wars story, I would have pitched them Green Knight. Like that. It's the Jedi code under pressure for being bullshit. Yeah. And I think that would have been a have a droid that looks human.
That would have been great.
That's
as
so
the Green
good.
Knight, and you cut off its head, and then like you can imagine all of that, and it would just be such a fascinating use of the Star Wars lore. But in that context, that would have been my pitch. So like it's just sat there as this piece of IP, because it's a medieval poem. Anybody can tell that story. Yeah. It's free to anyone to use. But like it just triggered me when you said that, because it's a world that I've been thinking about for 20 years, wanting to do something with, and it as you rightly say, it's rich, it's beautiful, and he did such a weird and wonderful job with that film. Not at all what I would have done, but like that's his vision. Yeah. And I had a hard time watching it because I just couldn't get there. So I had my own picture in my head.
Look, Star Wars, love it for all the reasons, that it's popular and, digging in that world. But I can't even imagine Star Wars telling that story, right? Like they have to play at such a tamer story level, just at their like level of, success and audience. And that's one of the reasons I'm excited that this whole,
at this point, I could make an anthology of such awesome Star Wars ideas people like you have told me in casual conversations that really just show you like how shit like storytelling. And given there have been some successful parts of the Disney experience, I'm not like writing it all off, but man, it just like, as far as like a corporation trying to set up a successful assembly line for something and just producing so much garbage.
Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan is just,
no comment. But I'm hoping there's a ground. But part of it is like looking at the incentives that Star Wars and Marvel have to play with. It's like they can't push stories like that and still be what they are. And it's why I'm hoping, really bullish of what we're doing here and other filmmakers, that there can be that middle ground that are bigger worlds, that are bigger stories that can push narratives like that, right? And it's like, I love that the Green Knight existed because it was pushing on all of those, but I would even love it. I'd love it even more if it was a universe I could dig into over 5-10 years and really like feel that theme within a larger context, right? That's just, not, grittier, like DC universe grittier, but like actually like grounded and, you know, being.
Well, no, I think going into Prospect, it would have been my dream to direct a Star Wars movie. Yeah. And in the process of making Prospect, I have talked to actually a number of people who have directed and written in the Star Wars universe. And hilariously, separately, they've all told me, don't do it. Like, and it's to the point where, yeah, it has no appeal anymore, because it's just about trying to like get the recipe right that just makes everybody happy, and you don't feel, at least yet, like real experimentation, like actual like exciting ideas. And you know, if anything, it's just like we get to be way weirder than Star Wars. We get to be so much more experimental in Star Wars, and that's where content worth watching is going to come from.
Yeah, I agree. There's the homogenization of everything through this Marvel lens. Although, to be fair, Miss Marvel, I don't know if you've seen it, is a breath of fresh air, and it's really, it's got something really charming.
I think Marvel has way less baggage. Yeah. Like it's not based off this iconic thing that everyone saw in their childhoods that they have an emotional attachment to that can never be recreated. Like the comic books are kind of way more of a blank slate in my opinion, but it's they're much better set off to try stuff than Star Wars. But I mean, you know, we'll see.
The best one was like Alien. You know, it's Jaws in space, but like he grounded it in it's truckers. You know, they're arguing over pay and all this kind of stuff, and it
love
just
Alien.
Yeah, oh my god. And then you've got James Cameron who does Aliens, and you're just like, I mean, it's the best, probably the best sequel anyone will ever make. No fear, just, you know, full bore. And then it just got worse and worse and worse. Yeah. But you know, that it just shows you that like it is possible. And you're absolutely right. Just go be weird. That's what I tell anyone who's like coming to this space. Like, what should I do? It's like everyone copies everybody else. Don't do that. Just be brave and be weird, because if you are, there will be an audience for it, because they're so exhausted by everything else. They'll be like, please, thank God, give me something fresh and original, and it will work. And you know, it's even if you're backdooring a more substantial project around through NFTs, like the staying power of what you've done and the fact that you've even spent as long as you did getting Prospect off the ground should give anyone that spends even a modicum of time looking at what you're doing confidence that you can stay the course and you're not just going to walk away when things get tough. Because there is no tougher thing than making a feature film. I don't think anybody realizes just how brutal.
Oh my God,
it is. It's so hard.
Yeah. So any last thoughts before we finish this off? Because I appreciate we could probably talk for hours about just how bad everyone is. Rogue One was good. They didn't bottle the ending.
No, they did great. Everybody
written by I gotta say, written by our good friend Chris White, who is a strong supporter of this project. He reached out just a few weeks ago to be like, you know, and this is Chris White's, just for people who don't know, and he wrote Rogue One, but he also like directed a Twilight movie. He has an Oscar for writing about a boy, like big Hollywood guy. And he reached out and was like, what you guys are doing is so exciting. This is something that like literally everyone like me has been imagining for decades, but it's just it's too big to tackle. You have to reinvent so many things to change how the system works. And like that truly is what Web3 is automating. It's automating the bureaucracy of Hollywood that truly prevents independent. So, I mean, I think that's what our project, you know, is all about.
Well said. I don't think I could say anything beyond that, except I'm fully on board, and I'm trying to do the same thing in a weird and wonderful corner in another universe. But I think it's a universe where we're just.
I know. I'm excited. I think I was I wasn't familiar so much with this side of what you're doing, and now I really, really want to dig in because it sounds fascinating. I'm so glad we connected.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks, Brice. Thanks, Zeek, for taking the time, and I'm sure we'll see you again soon when the universe has more characters and more story to tell about. But yeah, you got to keep us informed.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, guys.
We'll do.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye then.
See ya.
Bye.